In 1970, a single income could buy a house, raise 3 kids, and still leave enough for a boat in the driveway. Today, 2 incomes can barely rent an apartment. Same country, same work ethic, same dream. So what changed? Here's the uncomfortable part. Nothing broke. Nothing failed. The system is working exactly as designed. You were just never the one it was designed for. Stick around, because by the end of this, you'll understand why your paycheck feels like a treadmill, why just save more is terrible advice, and why the people telling you to hustle harder are usually the ones cashing in on your hustle. Let's start with a number that should bother you more than it does. Since 1990, worker productivity in the United States has climbed more than 60%. Workers are producing more value per hour than ever in human history. Meanwhile, wages, adjusted for inflation, have crawled up by less than 20%. That gap, that widening space between what you produce and what you get paid for it, that gap has a name in economics. It's called decoupling, and it's not an accident. It's the quiet engine of modern wealth transfer. Think about that for a second. If you work harder, smarter, longer, and your paycheck barely moves, where does the extra value go? It goes up, always up, to shareholders, to capital, to the people who own the machines, the platforms, the buildings, the debt, not to the people who run them. This is the first thing nobody tells you about being middle class. Your job was never designed to make you rich. It was designed to make you comfortable enough to keep showing up. Now let's talk about why this matters right now, in 2026, more than it ever has. Because for decades, there was an escape hatch, a side door out of the treadmill. It was called the housing market. Buy a home in your 20s, watch it appreciate, retire on the equity. That was the plan for your parents. And it worked, because in 1980, the average home cost about 3 times the average income. Today, it costs closer to 7 times. In some cities, more than 10. The side door didn't just get smaller, it got locked. And the people holding the key are, ironically, the same generation that walked through it while it was still open. So if wages aren't rising fast enough, and the housing ladder pulled itself up behind the last generation, where exactly does the middle class turn? This is where it gets interesting, because the system doesn't leave you with nothing. It leaves you with something that looks like a solution, but behaves like a trap. It leaves you with credit. Here's how the modern middle class actually functions, step by step. And I want you to notice how normal this feels, because that's the whole trick. Step 1. You earn a salary that covers your bills, but rarely builds real savings, because rent, healthcare, and childcare have outpaced wage growth for 30 straight years. Step 2. To maintain a lifestyle that matches your parents at the same age, you borrow credit cards for emergencies, auto loans for reliable transportation, student debt just to qualify for the job that was supposed to make debt unnecessary. Step 3, that debt isn't free, it's priced. Interest becomes a second rent you pay, silently, on money you already spent. Step 4, because you're servicing debt, you can't build the capital needed to buy assets, stocks, property, ownership, the things that actually compound wealth over time. Step 5, without assets, you remain dependent on wages. Which brings us back to step 1. That's not a broken system. That's a closed loop. And closed loops are remarkably profitable for whoever sits outside them. Now here's the uncomfortable math, the part most explainers gloss over because it sounds too cynical to say out loud. Wealth in a capitalist economy doesn't primarily come from income. It comes from owning things that generate income while you sleep. A person earning $90,000 a year from a job is taxed on nearly every dollar the moment they earn it. A person earning $90,000 a year from dividends, capital gains, or rental income is often taxed less, sometimes far less, and can delay or restructure that tax entirely. The tax code was not written by accident. It was written over decades, largely by people who already owned assets. So it makes sense that it rewards owning over earning. This is the part that stings. The system isn't rigged in some cartoonish, secret meeting way. It's rigged in a boring, procedural, 1,000 small decisions way. Nobody signed a document that said keep the middle class working. They just kept optimizing policy for the people already in the room. And the middle class was rarely in the room. Let's talk hype versus reality for a second, because this is where a lot of financial advice quietly makes things worse. The hype says, cut your coffee spending and you'll retire a millionaire. The reality is that if you make $45,000 a year and put away 5% of it diligently for 30 years, compound interest is a wonderful thing, but it's fighting a losing race against rent that rises faster than your savings rate ever could. The hype says, get a side hustle. Everyone's doing it. The reality is that a second job doesn't fix a structural wage gap. It just monetizes your exhaustion. You're not building wealth. You're renting out more of your limited hours to buy yourself a little breathing room, temporarily, until the next price increase eats it. There's a quiet irony here worth sitting with. The financial advice industry, the one selling budgeting apps and hustle culture, often profits more from your anxiety about money than you ever will from following its advice. So if working harder isn't the answer, and saving alone isn't the answer, what actually moves someone from the loop into ownership? Historically, it's been one of three things: inherited capital, access to cheap credit at the exact right moment, usually before an asset boom, or extreme, early risk-taking that most people, reasonably, can't afford to take with rent due next week. Notice something about all three. None of them are work harder. All of them are about proximity to capital, not effort. That's the part that should genuinely bother you. We've built a culture that moralizes wealth as a reward for hard work, while the actual mechanism of wealth building has almost nothing to do with how hard you work. Now let's zoom out, because this isn't just a personal finance problem. It's a structural one, and the stakes are still climbing. When a large enough share of a population works full-time and still can't build assets, you don't just get individual stress, you get a slow erosion of social mobility. Fewer people believe the system rewards effort. Trust in institutions drops. Political volatility rises. Historically, when the gap between productivity and reward stretches too far for too long, societies don't stay calm about it. We're not there yet, but the trajectory is not subtle. And here's the quietly absurd part. The people at the very top of this system often need the middle class to keep believing in the ladder, even as the ladder gets pulled further away. Because a middle class that stops believing in upward mobility, stops spending, stops borrowing, stops playing along, the story has to stay convincing, even as the math stops adding up. So where does that leave you? Not with a 5-step plan to get rich, because if this video promised you that, it would be lying to you the same way the system already has. What it leaves you with is a sharper question. If income was never the real path to wealth, if the ladder was quietly redesigned while everyone was still climbing it the old way, then the real decision isn't how much harder you can work. It's whether you keep playing a game built to keep you in it, or start asking what it would actually take to stand outside the loop, even a little. Because the middle class was ever told the rules changed. They just kept playing the old ones and wondering why they never won.